Think of what you experienced at the stage of the challenging process where you currently stand. Try to put yourself back into the feeling you experienced at that point.
And with this small excerpt of our VR application SelVReflect, we welcome you to our presentation on how we can design a guided VR experience to help us explore and reflect on personal challenges. We are Nadine Wagener from the University of Bremen
and Leon Reicherts from University College London.
All of us face some personal challenges in everyday life. You might have to deal with an argument with your boss or team at work, address a conflict at home, or resolve a disagreement in a relationship. All of those can be linked to anxiety and stress and often involve difficulties with planning, prioritizing, or decision-making. Many people then get stuck in such negative thought cycles, which is called rumination. Taking the time to think through such personal everyday challenges and to learn from them can help. This is called reflection. Although reflecting on these challenges can facilitate understanding, provide new meaning, and improve mental health and well-being, we often do not have the headspace, time, and resources for that. Tools can support us in understanding how to approach challenges, for example through helping us deconstruct them into smaller entities. We think that especially VR can provide meaningful interventions in this regard. They insulate users from distractions, can create highly controlled yet immersive environments, and in VR, dynamic elements and different dimensions can be used to represent spatial distancing or different levels of importance. And users can freely walk through a virtual environment, exploring them from different perspectives. However, reflective processes need scaffolding and guidance to be really effective. Why is that? In art therapy, therapists guide their clients throughout the reflection process, and they create an atmosphere of creativity, freedom, and playfulness at the same time. Reflection can be a challenging activity and often does not occur automatically. It needs to be encouraged. The task of guidance is to prevent rumination, thus getting stuck in negative thought cycles. Further, not everyone finds it easy to open up and express their emotions, and one might need a helping hand with that. Also, creative drawing can be challenging. We probably all know it when we want to write a paper and sometimes face a blank page and are overwhelmed how to begin with our paper, and similar issues occur in art therapy. Thus, our aim is to build an immersive experience in VR in which participants can express and reflect on a personal everyday challenge in a creative way, while also providing such guidance as discussed before. We will further investigate the effect of such a VR experience. For our application SelVReflect, we were inspired by art therapy and positive psychology, aiming to use creative expression to foster reflection and positive feelings. We extend previous research in which users can create their own virtual environment through drawing, choosing 3D objects, and animated brushes to express an emotional challenge. For the VR guidance, we were inspired by related works for open-ended tasks. We chose voice-based guidance because in our context, they are less distracting, easy to use, feel more personal, interactive and engaging. But which gender should the voice have? Should it be synthesized or a real voice?
The user-centered design process we elaborated to answer these questions consisted of 4 main stages. In the first stage, we got each of the participants to draw a personal challenge in VR without guidance. By doing so, they got an understanding of when and where they might need help while drawing their challenge and reflecting on it. Then, in the second stage, participants watched a recording of themselves from the first stage. The aim of this was that they could identify and make a list of specific moments in which they could have needed help through guiding prompts. In the third stage, participants then came together to discuss the challenges they faced and the list of prompts they have created, to then elaborate together how the guidance could be designed and which prompts it could provide. In the last stage, the participants collaboratively enacted the role of the guide. They did this by providing another person who performed the same task in VR with the prompts they elaborated in the third stage. Based on this, they then discussed which of the prompts work and which do not. This resulted in a revised list of prompts. The research team then worked through this list of prompts and performed another iteration of grouping and refining them. This resulted in the following 3 types of prompts. First, suggestions for concrete actions to help with the creative process. Second, to receive inspiration and encouragement for expression and reflection. And third, to receive thought-provoking questions for reflection. Here's an excerpt to give you an idea of how these guidance prompts would be provided to participants while engaging in the creative process. First, we can see how the participant expresses a part of their challenge. They do so by exploring different tools, objects, and brushes in the palette. They then walk through their drawing to explore it from different perspectives. Then, the participant receives a guiding prompt, getting them to explore and reflect on further aspects.
Have you considered how the separate stages might be connected to each other? How could you design these connections? Could they differ? Remember, there is no right or wrong here. As long as you express it in a way that feels right to you, that's all that matters.
So, how did you investigate the effectiveness of this guided VR experience? We examined how the experience affects participants' emotional state, self-efficacy, and the participants' reflection on their past challenge. In our study, participants had to first fill in the respective questionnaires. Then, in the main part, they had to describe their challenge in a few bullet points to then express it in VR. After that, participants filled in the questionnaires and took part in a semi-structured interview. Now, let's have a look at what we found. First, the quantitative findings suggest that SelVReflect was successful at getting participants to reflect, as can be concluded from the TSRI scores, which were elevated overall. Second, the experience of using SelVReflect was also rated positively. It was seen highly engaging, creative, and insightful. With respect to SelVReflect's effects on participants' emotional state, there was a significant difference in the increase of positive emotions. Regarding participant self-efficacy, there was also a significant increase, suggesting that SelVReflect strengthened participants' belief in their own ability to succeed. Next, we describe our qualitative findings.
First, virtual reality provides a separate space which enabled participants to enter a different mindset. Not being distracted by external factors helps to be immersed in and explore one's thoughts, as P9 describes. Participants also commented on the spatiality aspect of virtual reality. For example, users reported experiencing a third-person perspective or bird's-eye view. Through this change of perspective, they discovered new interesting aspects within their challenge. Most participants emphasized that using the tool palette increased their motivation and got them to think in a more abstract way when expressing more complex emotions. As a third theme, the guidance provides structure on the one hand and inspiration on the other hand. While the way how the prompts were delivered made participants relax and ease into the task, it also helps to dissect the situation. This further allowed users to feel more confident and explore different perspectives. Finally, participants also reported that they experienced a change in their conceptualization, first, of the challenge itself, for example, reporting a sense of accomplishment and closure, second, in regard to themselves as a person, for example, coming to the realization that they can accept help from others. Third, participants reflected on behavior change in the future.
Based on these findings, as well as those from our user-centered design process, we established 3 design recommendations for similar creative, reflective experiences. First, the guidance needs to adapt to changing user needs over time. At the beginning, users are often confronted by the blank page syndrome, and they are unsure about how to begin the creation. In this first stage, guidance in VR should thus be more frequent, delivering practical, hands-on suggestions. Once the user is more confident with the tools and their creation has a certain structure, the prompts should become less frequent and shift from giving practical input towards getting the user to reflect on the challenge on a higher level. Being more abstract in our expression often helps us to think more about why rather than how something happened, as also suggested by construal level theory. However, depending on what is to be expressed, being abstract is not always that easy and straightforward. Thus, guided VR experiences should provide encouragement to think and express oneself in an abstract way, while providing context-aware scaffolding to facilitate reflection. Last but not least, too extensive scaffolding, even if it may be beneficial for reflection, can reduce creativity, enjoyment, and motivation. We should thus design applications that strike the right balance between motivating users to reflect and offering sufficient breathing room for joy and playfulness. Our findings emphasize the importance of free choice and autonomy, and context-specific guidance without authoritative statements. Thus, we recommend to provide reflective stimulation instead of instruction to facilitate reflection. And with that, we get to the end of our presentation and thank you for your interest in our paper.